It's a special edition of Love of the Star because we got our buddy Ross Tucker with us here. Zach Wolchuk alongside the Super Bowl winning scout Bryan Broaddus hanging out with you. And Ross, you have jumped on a lot of our platforms, the G-Bag Nation, which we host 2 to 7, 105 through the Fan, also on Odyssey. And every year you always tell us about an awesome Mother's Day special that I think is outstanding. Now, we got Father's Day around the corner. Do we have something similar going on here?
Yeah, this is actually different, though, and it's funny because I just met these guys like a year ago. It's called futurefans.com, and I really wish I had found them like 5 or 6 years earlier. I don't know if you guys have kids or whatever, nieces, nephews. It's actually really hard to get your kids to sit on the couch and watch the game with you. That's all my dad and I did. I watched every Eagles game with my dad. He'd get all mad because Buddy Ryan would call these blitzes and they'd blow it. And, that was like part of it. But it's not like that for kids now. They want to be on their iPads. They're just not that into it. So these guys have kind of cracked the code. Again, it's futurefans.com. It's for probably ages like 4 to 10, maybe 3 to 11. But it's a book that teaches you like how the downs work or how the points work. And then there's an activity, right? So like to learn the downs, you throw bean bags in these hoops, and that teaches you how you get a first down or not. It's actually pretty genius. My daughters are 13, almost 12, and based on the questions they were asking me at the Super Bowl, I did not do a very good job of teaching them football. My excuse, guys, is that I'm away every weekend broadcasting. So most of the guys listening or watching, you don't have that excuse. So go to futurefans.com. I think they got like a 20% discount now. The funny part of the story is these guys are Bengals fans. And a few years ago, when the Bengals had that playoff run, the AFC Championship, the Super Bowl, they couldn't get their kids to sit there and watch the game. And their kids are like, I'll watch next year. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like, we're Bengals fans. Like, there is no, like, you got to watch now. This is the AFC Championship. It's the Super Bowl. This might never happen again in your lifetime. So, anyway, it's pretty cool. And I've talked to a lot of families now that it actually works. Like, the kid sits there and watches the game with them. So, it's pretty much the best Father's Day gift you could ask for because it's really a gift that keeps on giving if you actually have your child be a lifelong fan and watch the Cowboys with you.
I love this. I'm going to tell my wife about this right now. There is a good chance you will hear my 15-month-old baby girl screaming during this podcast at some point. She is playing right outside the door. Dude. No doubt. And I got another girl on the way in November. So let's start them young here, Ross. This is awesome. I love that. This is a tremendous concept. So make sure you check that out. But Ross, I do want to talk Cowboys with you. And of course, you spent time with the Cowboys, a couple other teams as well. We're in this kumbaya stage with Brian Schottenheimer, right? And it's all about the energy and football's fun again. Some players are tweeting out. Is this kind of par for the course when you have a coaching change, or is this something that maybe Schotty is actually, we should buy into this new culture he's trying to build here?
Great question. 2 very separate thoughts for you, right? Number one, no matter who the coach is, things are different when they come in, right? And it's not always like kumbaya, everybody's I was in Dallas when Parcells came in. Right. That wasn't kumbaya.
Nope.
I mean, at all, right? Like that was like, hey, there's been too much kumbaya around here. We're changing things. Like there's a new sheriff in order. So it's not always like that with new coaches. It depends on who the new coach is, really, as to what the tone is and the culture that they want to set. Because I had 9 head coaches during my time in the NFL. By the way, really hard to do in 7 years. Really hard to do. But I pulled it off. So it's not always that. What I do want to tell you guys, I have no idea how Brian Schottenheimer will be as a head coach. None whatsoever. The 2 things I do know, or maybe 3, are, I mentioned 9 head coaches in the NFL. The most impressive one I had in terms of what I saw during my time with them, it was his dad. It was Marty Schottenheimer. And keep in mind, I had Parcells. I went on to New England, had Belichick. I finished in Washington again with Joe Gibbs. So these are like first ballot Hall of Fame coaches. And the guy that impressed me the most was Marty Schottenheimer. And, when you look at the track record of success that he had in Cleveland, Kansas City, Washington that one year when we went from 5 to 8-8, and then in San Diego, man, that's hard to do. Bryan can tell you to build it 4 different places is really hard to do. He was an unbelievable, I would say, judge of people. He would often say to us, it's not about picking the right players. It's about picking the right people.
Right.
I really felt that. I thought he did that. It's a shame that Daniel Snyder, wanted to do what he wanted to do and wanted to make all the decisions. Marty said, no, it's in my contract. Daniel Snyder said, see ya. Daniel Snyder wasn't having fun. He wanted to pick the players, and Marty wouldn't let him. So if Bryan Schottenheimer is half or 3/4 of the head coach that his dad was, then I think he'll be very successful. I didn't realize this. I saw this on social media recently. I didn't realize that Marty Schottenheimer actually wasn't that great of a D coordinator. He was a better head coach than he was a coordinator, which makes me wonder if his son Bryan is the same way. By the way, Bryan was the quarterback coach when I was in Washington 01 until they all got fired and Daniel Snyder brought in Spurrier, which was going from the best coach I ever had to the worst coach I ever had in a day or whatever that was interesting. So anyway, I'm a proponent of Schottenheimer. I'm glad he's getting a chance. It might go great. It might go terrible, but I think his track record was enough. Everybody always wants to get the offensive guru, Ben Johnson type. And I get that, but that's not necessarily what always makes the best head coach. Let's see what Bryan Schottenheimer can do. He's certainly been around some good ones.
So you obviously, you're an aficionado then when it comes to the overturning of coaching staffs, new offensive line coaches. That's been a big conversation when it comes to players like Terrence Steele, for instance. Maybe moving on from Coach Solari, he was successful under Coach Philbin. Maybe they didn't gel. Now you bring in Coach Riley, who is coming from Kansas State and is a first-time NFL head coach. How different can that be for the offensive line, having gone through different changes with the offensive line coach? But maybe when you find the right one, how it can really help a player out.
Man, I'll come on the show anytime. These are the right questions. I'm just being like, these are the right questions, okay? So I don't know Riley from Kansas State at all, so I can't say anything to him. But I also had 9 offensive line coaches. And I would say the biggest thing that the media misses is how important position coaches are.
Right.
Because we focus so much on the head coach and then the coordinators. I'm a believer that position coaches can be the difference between wins and losses. And, again, having 9 offensive line coaches, there was a wide range for those guys. There were guys that were really good, and they were one of the reasons why we were better and won. And there were guys that really struggled on multiple levels that I witnessed and were one of the reasons why we lost, in my mind. And then there's certainly guys in the middle. The one story I tell, okay, is I don't like to say names. I'm never trying to make anybody look bad, but I was on a team one year, and the running backs really, really struggled in pass protection.
Yeah.
Primarily because they didn't really know who they were supposed to block a lot, okay? The very next year, the running backs were the same guys, and they were good players, really good players, okay? Same guys. We had a new running back coach. It was like a different world. They didn't miss. I don't remember them missing one the whole year. And we went from losing record by a lot to winning record. And I'm convinced that the running back coach was worth at least 1 win that year and maybe 2. And yet nobody knew his name, probably didn't even make that much money that year. But position coaches matter a lot. And as for this Riley guy from K-State, I'm always a little bit skeptical of anyone has never coached in the NFL. The flip side of that, probably the best offensive line coach in the NFL is Jeff Stoutland for the Eagles.
Yes, Eagles.
When he came to the Eagles from Alabama, he had never coached in the NFL.
Right.
And I had a high level of skepticism. Well, now look what they've done, right? Like, I mean, look what he's done developing them. Their offensive line, in fairness, though, they draft just straight like those guys are monsters.
Yes.
Absolute monsters. But Stoutland does a terrific job with them. It's a great question, Zach. It's really, really important.
You know, Ross, I'll out who you're talking about. It's all those 7-step drops you had to deal with Spurrier, right? Spurrier didn't help you. It's like, hey, just block them up. Just block them up.
Oh, man, Bryan, like, and this is what happens when I'm on in Washington. They just ask me all kinds of Spurrier questions because I could do an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Telling you Spurrier stories that would blow your mind. It actually makes me very surprised. And I don't have any issue with him as a guy.
Sure.
But it actually makes me very surprised that he had the success in college that he had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very surprised because he was like, I mean, I can't even, there was no hot reads or sight adjustments.
Oh, sure. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, like the audible system, we only had 2 protections. We're playing the Steelers, and they're bringing the Mike and Sam every play. Yeah. And the running back, Stephen Davis or Kenny Watt, would pick up one. The other one would just kill the quarterback. Yeah. And James Farrier says to me, Tuck, what do you guys got? Like 2 protections? I said, yep. That's exactly what we have.
I've heard the stories. I've heard the stories about the 7-step drops and all this. So when you were telling the story, you're like, I would be nice here, but I'll call them out. I'll call out for you. But I think but anyway. But hey, Ross, I wanted to ask you this though, again, about offensive line play. Are we getting to a point in time where interior offensive linemen are becoming more important than the tackles? And I mean that with the way that people are attacking the middle of the pocket and affecting quarterbacks' eye level and then their ability to not step up and make throws.
So obviously I got playing time, believe it or not, at all 5 spots, but all of my 24, 25 starts came at the 3 interior positions. So 2 thoughts on that, Bryan. Number 1, I can't go there yet to call it more important because it's still usually not as much anymore with all the 5 down stuff,
right?
But it's still usually 3 for 2 inside. And the tackles are one-on-one a lot still in obvious passing situations. So I'm not going to say it's more important. What I will tell you is that interior pass rush pressure is much more effective than edge pressure. Quarterbacks have gotten way better at stepping up in the pocket, at being able to get rid of it before the edge pressure gets there, which is why I would tell you a guy like Aaron Donald, to me, is more valuable than a TJ Watt, right? Like a guy that can bring consistent pressure up the middle is more valuable than the guy on the outside. It's funny because when I played, I really do think most of my starts, including the 7 at left guard for the Cowboys, most of my starts were at left guard, which I think might have been the lowest paid position in the league when I was playing. And also, like the thought process was you could put anybody in there at guard, which was really misguided because that was when it started with John Randall, Leroy Glover, Bryant Young. I mean, those guys were hell on wheels now, right? Like every time I had a one-on-one pass pro against any of those guys, I was like, oh crap. You know what I mean? Like they were, Leroy was awesome in Dallas. I mean, he had like these like karate moves and stuff. It was really impressive. So I think that's why guys like Trey Smith and Landon Dickerson are making as much money as they are. I think it's why the Cowboys, quite frankly, drafted Tyler Booker. And I loved that pick. I did an Alabama game 2 years ago, and I was talking with Tyler last year at the O-line Masterminds around this time of year. You want to talk about an impressive guy. I mean, 2 or 3 games into his true sophomore year, he was the leader of Alabama's team. I mean, at the O-line Masterminds, he would walk up to people me or whoever, and the rest of the Alabama team would follow him. Like he's that guy. So you know who you're getting as a person, but then as a player, man, that interior with Tyler Smith and Tyler Booker, I think in very short order, we will be talking about the Cowboys having the best guard tandem in the NFL. I mean, it might even be later this year.
Sure.
But that pocket should be stout. I mean, that there should not be a lot of push coming up the middle. Dak should have a really good ability to step up. And I actually think, knowing Schottenheimer's track record when he was the OC with the Jets, certainly, hey, listen, when I played for the Redskins 2001, Stephen Davis led the NFC in rushing. We ran power and lead weak every play. I mean, it was unbelievable. I think the Cowboys are going to try to run the ball a lot. What's fascinating about that is, do they have a good runner? Whereas they just got Pickens.
Yeah.
So they've got a good tight end and two good receivers. I think they want to run it more, which is why one of the reasons why you draft Booker. But I'm not sure they have a great runner. And I think that they have really good skill guys at the other position. So that's the thing I'm probably most interested in, is to see just what the balance is run the pass there in Dallas this year.
Hey, Ross, when you speaking of Pickens, when you're in a locker room and you kind of know the history of a guy, you don't know the guy, but maybe you talk to some guys. I mean, you mentioned talking to some Steeler guys and stuff like that. When you're a guy like that and somebody like a guy like Pickens, who is super talented, but maybe a little bit super crazy too, how do you, as a player, do you kind of look at that as like, all right, we're trying to get better here, or hold on to your ass? What's the player in the locker room think about a big move like that?
Yeah, well, they're excited because they don't really know about whatever reasons why Pittsburgh wanted to move on. I mean, they see some of the crazy stuff he does on the field, which, by the way, congratulations for Cowboys fans. He might be the most entertaining guy in the league. He's done like 5 things I've never seen anybody else do on a football field before. I have no idea. It's like there's a glitch, and what do the kids call it now? Crashes out. Like, I'm excited for Cowboys fans that you're going to get to see some Pickens crash outs this year. He literally does the craziest things I've ever seen on a football field, which makes it entertaining. Players will be very, very excited because they know how good he is. Right. And also, they'll give him the benefit of the doubt. They will. They'll give him the benefit of the doubt because it's a new place and you want it to work out. You want him to be what you think and know he can be. So they'll give him the benefit of the doubt until they won't. Until there's an issue or there's a problem, if there's an issue or problem. Sometimes with guys, a change of scenery can be what helps them, what works for them. With him, I don't know. There's not a good track record for when the Pittsburgh Steelers decide to move on from a mercurial wide receiver. It usually does not go all that great for that guy in his next stop, but we'll see. Maybe Dallas can be different. I hope for the Cowboys it is, or maybe they'll just get a lot out of him this year and then move on. I don't know, but I think they're excited, Bryan, and I think they give him the benefit of the doubt.
Last one for you, Ross, before we let you boogie on out of here. We've talked a lot about who is and who is not at these voluntary OTAs, and the coaching staff continues to stress voluntary. Well, one person who hasn't been or has been in and out is Micah Parsons. Trayvon Diggs, another one. He's been rehabbing and doing his own stuff on the side. Media and fans, that can be annoying. We bring a big story about that. From a player's perspective, big deal or not a big deal if your teammate is there for the voluntary portion of camp?
The players don't care at all. And in fact, I'm quite sure they all support Micah Parsons. The Trayvon Diggs thing, as long as they feel like he's getting his stuff done, I think it's a little bit different with a quarterback. You know what I mean? Like a quarterback, the tenor of practice changes if the starting quarterback's not there, right? So Dak being there is a big deal. I think all those guys support Micah in doing whatever it takes to get a contract that he deserves. I think he's the best defensive player in football. I probably told you guys he grew up like a mile from where I am right now. I saw his third high school game ever. I texted Penn State. I said, you need to offer this. He was a freshman. I said, you need to offer this kid immediately. They offered him Tuesday, after 3 high school football games. Can you even imagine what Micah Parsons was like in high school? I think he had like 6 sacks in the game I was watching.
Crazy.
It was crazy. So everybody supports him getting the money he's getting, to get the money he's getting. I have no idea. Maybe I can come on some other time, and Bryan, you can attempt to explain why the Cowboys have the philosophy they do of just waiting until the last second. I don't know. Like the day of the first game, Mike is going to get like $45 million a year. I don't know what that logic is, but that's how the Cowboys go about it. The Trayvon Diggs thing, the only thing I would say about that, I had a teammate one time, this is 2002, I believe, that had a $500,000 workout bonus, which is more or less what Trayvon has. He's got a de-escalator in his salary, whatever. He had to go to 75%. It's a 12-week period back then. He'd go 75%. Well, there's only 4 workouts a week. So you have to go to 3 workouts a week on average over a 12-week period. So 36 workouts, where, by the way, you get paid anyway. They feed you, whatever. He went the first day and didn't go again. And this is 2002, when $500,000 was even more money than it is now. And I want to ask the guy, I didn't want to do it on a show or something, but I want to ask him sometime, like, how stupid do you feel now? You know what I mean? Like, how dumb do you feel that you just get $500,000? I don't care how much money you have, $500,000. And even if you say, I'm set for life, whatever, you could give that money to your favorite charity. You could give that money to your high school. You know what I mean? Like I offered to pick him up and drop him off every day for 10% of it. You know what I mean? Like, so the Trayvon, like that I'll never understand that. And I don't care how much money these guys make. At some point when they're in their 40s, they're going to be like, what was I thinking? That was free money that I just gave up.
Ross, you're a stud, bro. I love anytime we get to have you on. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Hopefully we can do this more often when we get closer to the football season. Anything else you want to go ahead and promote? Where can the people find you? And give us that link again one more time for that amazing Father's Day item.
Yeah, so just check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. Then you know what I'm up to. I do have a pretty cool podcast network, the Even Money Betting Podcast. They tell me is like the #1 NFL betting podcast. I do the Ross Tucker Football Podcast daily, right? So if you're looking for 25 minutes or less of what's going on around the NFL and a former Cowboys take on it, I got you covered. Obviously, you guys have your terrific show for the Cowboys team-specific stuff. But if you're also looking to add, a more general NFL-wide show, you can certainly check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. And yeah, check out futurefans.com. It works. I wish they would have come up with it earlier. Just based on the questions my daughters were asking me at the Super Bowl, I did a terrible job of teaching them football. I guess I kind of thought that they would just want to watch games with their dad or watch them on TV. Nope, not at all. Maybe the older one a little bit. The younger one has no interest whatsoever. So I don't know if that makes me a bad dad or a good dad or somewhere in between. But hopefully you guys can get your kids to watch the games with you. Futurefans.com. Just imagine how much that would do. I think it's $60. It'd be the best $60 you've ever spent if it means your kids will actually watch the games with you. Futurefans.com.
100%. Ross, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll chat again soon.
Sounds great. Take care, guys.
There he goes, Ross Tucker, the hardest working man in showbiz, the man, the myth, the legend here on Love of the Star. You are listening to Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. Zach Wolchuk alongside the Super Bowl winning scout, Bryan Broaddus. Thank you so much to Ross Tucker for jumping on with us. That dude is a freaking stud. He really is.
Yeah, Ross, he's got an interesting perspective. Ross was not a star player. And I was with Ross with the Cowboys, and Ross was we plugged him in. He was probably always going to be a journeyman type of a guy. He was going to be a backup. He had to start 7 games. I mean, it's, he gave you everything he had, as a player. As he mentioned, he bounced around a little bit, but that's to his credit that he was able to kind of keep a job, being a guy that you could plug in for 2-3 games. And then he was going to get you through kind of that bridge player, but super smart, it's just great teammate and all that. But from his perspective, always an interesting one, because the superstar players, we talk to them more. We tend to ask whether it's CeeDee Lamb or Dak Prescott, but when you go to the player that tends to have been maybe a backup guy or a down the line guy, kind of have a different, it's more of a true perspective of what the team really is. And I thought you asked 2 really good questions. He mentioned it right off the jump, about the situation and the coaching changes and how important, because that does affect how Tyler Smith, third coach he's going to have to go through now, third offensive line coach, and maybe a fourth line coach, because his offensive coordinator, Clayton Adams, is a former line coach. So,
right.
When you're a young player and, you want to make sure there's that continuity that, I remember Paul Alexander getting the job here with the Cowboys. They bring Paul Alexander in, and, he's dealing with veterans. I mean, he's dealing with veteran guys that are like, he's talking about high hand, low hand, and how to block and where to put your hands. And these, the Tyron Smiths and the Zach Martins and those guys, they're not high hand, low hand players, and now they're trying to do that. And it's, it's kind of like, I don't know. And then quickly that's transitioned into now with, okay, Mark Colombo, that kind of thing. So yeah, right. It's the offensive line coach, and Todd Archer and I've had this discussion before. I give Todd a lot of credit for this. Maybe the second most important coach on the staff when you look at in the big picture of things. Offense and the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, that kind of thing. But look at the offensive line coach. That's the guy. We always talk about the engine. It's the cliche thing to say, oh, it's the engine of the team, da 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 da. But in reality, it really, really is. But if you have a coach that's not connected to the players, and he mentioned Jeff Southland at Philadelphia, they've got talent and they've got a really, really good coach. And that's a dangerous combination for a football team. You dream to have that kind of mix with your group.
So we just wrapped up the final OTA practices before we get into the mandatory minicamp next week. What were some of the things that stood out to you from some of the takeaways that we heard of from the final OTA practices?
Yeah, I think that to me, it seemed like we're speaking of offensive line, we didn't hear a whole lot about the offensive line. And, I know that's something that everybody was kind of, well, how's Booker looking and what's going on at left tackle and, all these things. And that's why I asked Ross the question about, the inside and how big that could be. But we haven't heard a lot about the offensive line play. They've kind of gone with some guys. It seems like that Guyton is at the left tackle spot. We'll see what Awesome Richards does. But next week, as you mentioned, the mandatory, the mini camp, this is the final thing, because this will be, they're trying to install as much stuff as they can before they get to training camp. So after next Thursday, this thing packs up and goes quiet for a month. Now, players will stay and work out. The rookie players will stay and work out and, and get caught up and, try and get as much done as they can to get up with everybody else. But this thing will go quiet. And if that's the case, then, no more of the teaching and no more. It's just really about working out and stuff. So it's really, really important these next 3 days. And, usually we've seen coaches at the end, it's like the last one. And they're like, okay, let's go play paintball, or let's go team build, let's go bowl or putt-putt or top golf or whatever you want to go do. And I was worried about that because you and I will have the opportunity, because of our broadcasting schedule with our radio show with a day baseball, we'll be able to go out there and see some actual work. And I've kind of getting the indication from PR that they're going to actually practice. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see how these guys physically look. I'm excited to see where they're kind of lining them up here at the very end. And it just gives me a better glimpse of an idea when then you and I get back together and doing these stuff, on July 21st, when I head out to Oxnard, that we have an idea where these guys potentially could be. And then the real work and the real season starts then.
I think one of the players that, and we've discussed this on our show, Kyer Elam. It's just the name that keeps coming up. The corner that they traded for from Buffalo, and you played the game with us. Hey, are you intrigued? Or are you like, I need to see in Oxnard? And the answer probably is like, I need to see in Oxnard. Like all these guys, like let's get some pads on. And we were talking with Bobby Belt, and Bobby said like, hey, I mean, he has been burned a couple of times, but he keeps PBUs. I mean, Tommy Arish, our buddy Nick Harris, John Machota, like all of their notes from OTAs. Here's Kyer Elam with a PBU, and I'm a little bit nervous about the depth here in the secondary. And if they're able to hit, it's almost like they have to hit on Kyer Elam with the uncertainty with Diggs and his health. Ravel, we've heard great things from. You've told us that he's working hard. He's locked in.
Very willing. Very willing. Is the words I've been hearing about his rehab currently, and
that's exciting. But it's like, oof. Behind that, you got a lot of unproven. Kalen Carson, we're hopeful, right? Deron Bland, do you have to play him inside because you don't have anybody else that's there? I mean, Wanye Thomas, like you're getting. I don't think any Cowboy fan is going to be excited about an Andrew Booth that's going to get some starting opportunities. So, and Kyer Elam, he's a guy that I feel like if they can hit on this, he could be a big impact player.
Yeah, the thing with Elam is that. You're absolutely right. We've heard things during the media portion of practice where the PBUs and the coverage. The thing we know about Elam, and I know there's been some conversations. I know Bobby Belt, you and I were talking with Bobby, some things that he was visiting with some guys. I know some guys around the league. I know some guys at Buffalo and stuff like that. There's things that we were talking about. Well, why didn't Elam work at Buffalo? And, he really, really was the pick of the general manager. It really, it wasn't so much about the head coach there. It was more about the general manager. And all of a sudden you get into a little bit of that, well, that's your guy. Well, you're supposed to coach this guy up. Well, you're supposed to give me a better player, and it gets a little, and then the player gets caught in that. And I think for the most part, are there things that he's going to have to work on? Yeah, he from all indications of talking to folks, he's a super, super hard worker. And I'm not just saying that to make it sound better, but he really is. Guys, 2 or 3 guys I've talked to says, no, this guy cares. He wants to be better. It bothers him when he's not. But are there questions about his instincts? Really, he's a very good zone player, maybe a better zone player than a man coverage player. So if you're a good zone player, to me, that's a guy that does have some instincts. You have to be able to kind of read route, be able to react, those kinds of things. So it's kind of is that really the problem? Or, is the instincts a problem? Or is it what? Is it something different that we're not figuring quite out? But he clearly was selected by the general manager, and the head coach and the staff just, after a couple of things maybe happen, they're like, we can't play with this guy. We can't play with him. And so, maybe somebody else, he gets the opportunity to come here for, it's a low cost kind of a situation. But if he continues to get his hands on footballs in these media practice, that's all you can ask. There's going to be plays that he is going to give up. We see it all over the league. If you're giving up plays, you just got to bounce back and make the next play. But I've been encouraged by what I'm hearing. I'm interested to see how this all plays when we get to camp. And now it's trying to get ready to get the season on and get the best 53.
Last player that I wanted to highlight, and I don't know if you had anybody else you want to talk about, but I know fans they're interested in Joe Milton. And it seemed like you had your full Joe Milton experience out there at practice, where there's a holy jaw-dropping throw, and then oh my gosh, there's an interception. Here's Damone Clark picking one off.
Damone Clark hadn't had one in forever, and then him, Buddy Johnson, Shamir James. I mean, all these linebackers that you're kind of like going, wow, I wonder if these guys are going to make the team. And all of a sudden they're intercepting Joe Milton here. So yeah, kind of crazy in that way.
I just wonder, like, the physical talent is there with Joe Milton, but then it comes back to the processing. And I think that's been the takeaway from a lot of the beat is that might be something that he needs to improve on. We saw with Trey Lance. Hey, I mean, that was something where the game just seemed to move a little too fast for him sometimes. You've been around a lot of great quarterbacks, legendary Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Is that it really is the reps? It is the film work? Or do you kind of just have that football eye, or you like, is that super coachable?
Man, you're right. I was around Brett Favre, and it was more God-given than it was a brain. I'm sure people right now are like, yeah, this guy is not a very smart guy, with some of the actions that he's had over the years.
But that arm, it was a golden arm.
It was about mom and dad. It really was. This was a God-given, talented player. And, I was amazed. I really, really was amazed on a weekly basis how much he got away with just being a street ball type of a quarterback. He would drive you nuts. Drove Mike Holmgren, Steve Mariucci, Andy Reid, and those guys nuts. But they knew how talented he was. And they were willing to just buy into hey, there's going to be some crazy ass moments, but there's also going to be the moment where you're like, it wins you the game because he whistled a pass between three defenders for a touchdown, game-winning touchdown. That's the kind of player he was. With Troy Aikman, who was very much a cerebral type of a thinker in the way he played, knew where he was going with the ball. It's a shame that I caught Troy late in his career, but the opportunities I had to compete against him, you knew that he was very well prepared. He had talent around him, but he wasn't going to make mistakes. He wasn't going to cause the team harm by doing something stupid. And so, Joe Milton is somewhere in between that. he's somewhere in between wild ass throwing the ball guy, and I've got to be better at protecting, and I've got to understand. Now, a lot of it has to do with the reps that you get. And this is where Joe Milton and, we saw Trey Lance last year get a ton of burn in the preseason. I would love to see Dak Prescott get some work this preseason just because of all the newness, with Pickens involved, a new right guard. I'd like to see just some of that. But I'm also very interested in Joe Milton. And because you watch him play that final game against Buffalo, you're like going, wow, okay, rolling to his right and just firing a dart to the middle of the field. You're like going, no. Oh, wow, what a throw. And then there's a throw along the front pylon. He's running to his left and just a laser throw over the top of the pylon where only his receiver could get the ball for a touchdown. I mean, there are those moments where you're like going, you get it, you see it. And, but man, it is going to be a little bit, I do believe this is and I don't mean this in any disrespect to Dak, but this is the type of player that I could see that if something were to happen where you have to move on, I could see this being the guy that they at least is the bridge to maybe the next one, or maybe he develops to the point where, okay, we're comfortable playing. And I'm only saying that if something were to happen. I wish nothing but the absolute best for Dak Prescott. I do not want to see him fail. This team is better when he's better. So, but if in 2 years' time, it's just like, okay, and teams make quarterback changes all the time. They really, really do. And some prominent quarterbacks,
right.
I would have killed, I shouldn't say that. I would have given anything in the early 2000s when we didn't have a quarterback after Aikman to have access to the quarterbacks that are available today. The starting caliber quarterback that's available today, whether through trade or look at Aaron Rodgers signing. And maybe you think that 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, I would have loved to had 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers when Ross Tucker was playing for us. I mean, we might have been a better team. So I think that Joe Milton I think they're thinking of him more as the future type guy or potential future guy than they were even Trey Lance.
Always fun, man. I appreciate it. I can't wait till next week. We get some actual mini camp practices. That's going to be an absolute blast. That'll be fun. All right, that's Bryan Broaddus, the Super Bowl winning scout. Big thank you to Ross Tucker for joining us as well. I'm Zach Wolchuk. Until next time on A Love of the Star, hugs and hand pounds, everybody.